Good evening. This is the Athens City Shade Tree Commission meeting for January 10th, 2019. I've got one Title 33 issue. There was some pruning done by the city, I believe, to some trees on East State Street, just opposite the turn for Home Street, as part of the traffic light installation there. And they left some stubs.
Yes, they did.
And so I've asked Ron to deal with that, but I wanted to just record it on here. Anyone who wants to see what stub pruning can look like, that's a good example of it there. I don't have anything else under Title 33. Title 37, Rick, the code officer, sent me a plan for a development at 6 West Stimson Avenue. That's just opposite the post office. And I visited the site and noticed that there were some high voltage cables over the Stimson Avenue edge of the property. I did contact Jessica Aldine, one of the engineers for the city, and because they're in the process of developing a plan for the redevelopment of parts of Stimson Avenue. But at the moment, burying the high voltage cables is not on the list of things, and so if those high voltage cables stay, then it means that we really have to have small trees where those 3 large trees have been indicated on the plan. I think, but I haven't heard any whether this is possible or not, that they may be able to plant 2 additional trees on the east edge of the property. That may be possible, in which case they can then meet the requirement, which is something like 6 to 7 trees. I forgot to ask you what the exact area of this was. I tried to calculate it, and I used two different methods, and one came out with 6.3 and the other one came out with 6.6. So,
and you very well know, we do the old adage where it's above 5 we round up, below 5 we round down.
Yeah.
So I would say it's 6 trees.
Yeah, okay. So if it's 6 trees, then there are 4 at the rear of the property that are indicated. The 3 at the front, if they're small trees, that would make 5. Then we just need 1 additional tree on there.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I have emailed Jim Thomas, who's the architect, and with the plans on that, and he will be contacting the owner to see what they would like to do. And as soon as I find out, I will send you an email and let you know what they decide.
Right.
It's kind of early in the stage because construction's still going on, and they're still digging in the back, I do believe, trying to straighten that out, put the wall up and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good to see some landscaping there, and I'm sorry we can't have the large trees at the front because that's a street that's crying out for them, but the AEP's cables get in the way of this at the moment. Now, obviously, if that changes, then they would be able to plant large shade trees there, and we'd certainly encourage them to do so. Any questions on this one? Yes.
David, so as a business owner at 4 West Stimson, I'm aware that the power poles are currently in the sidewalk in that area. There's at least 2, maybe 3 poles in that vicinity, and I know at the very least that those have been requested to be addressed and moved. So I think that the current path of what the power lines are. I don't know if we want to consider that as being a given.
Oh, I mean, all I can do is work with what Jessica told me, and at the moment there isn't a plan, but she said that they would go back and see if there was a way forward with AEP to do something about this, because she recognised that this was an issue, and that if they're going to try and do a really nice job on Stimson Avenue, then it would be very good if we could get those lines buried or moved to a different location. But obviously, it costs money to do that.
Correct.
So, I mean, what I'm proposing to do, if there are no objections, I'll write this up, send it on to Rick with the caveats. You know, if the lines go, they can plant the trees there. Yeah. Otherwise, it's 3 small trees at the front and 1 additional tree somewhere else on the property.
Right, and as the project progresses, we can pay attention to what they really plan on doing, because this is almost fluid.
Yeah.
And maybe readdress it
Yeah.
if it gets smaller or larger, because we don't want something in there that's going to tear up the sidewalk eventually, really, with the roots or anything. So I think that we'll address it even as we get closer to that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, any other questions, comments on that one? Okay. Good. I have a report from Ron Lucas, if I can find it. Yes, here it is. He says Tree City application was submitted, and we're just waiting for the approval. He is purchasing trees from Greenleaf this year for the fall planting, which is still underway apparently, and they're going to. He'll get a discount because, in fact, some of these trees are going to be planted in spring. So, I guess if you want more details, contact Ron. The saga of the West State Street pole relocation continues. If you remember, we've had this one pop up on our agenda over the last 2 or 3 years. There are some poles at West State Street on the baseball fields, or on the road approaching the baseball fields, and AEP needs to relocate some of their poles there. And the pine trees, there are some pine trees in the way. I don't remember how many. It was 2 or 3, I believe, maybe 4. And Ron is planning to have AEP replace these with deciduous trees. He's got a mixture of small and large trees, serviceberry, a crabapple, and then a little leaf linden and a honey locust. And AEP will be responsible for the tree replacement. A written management plan for the East State Street Riparian Corridor Restoration Project is scheduled to be delivered by March 15th, 2019. I'm not sure what that's about. Does anybody else know anything about it?
What was the title again?
A management plan for the East State Street Riparian Corridor Restoration Project. Now, Riparian Corridor is a river.
So that is by the bike path behind the skate park and the,
Well, okay, what's that got to do with East State Street?
that much.
It's a long way away from where
It's the nearest street.
Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. Then I think I do know what that is. There was a piece of property that the city, I believe, is volunteering to help OU and the Conservancy manage in a way that will allow more public access. I think that's what that's about.
I wonder if they'd allow more trees.
Pardon?
I wonder if they'd like to allow more trees.
I think the issue is there's too many trees there.
Yeah, I looked at it recently. There's a lot of nice box elder and black cherry, but there is bush honeysuckle everywhere as an understory.
Yeah, and it's the bush honeysuckle that I think they're planning to have removed. There's also a lot of volunteer calorie pears there as well, which I have suggested that ought to be on the list to be removed as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should get that in March. The Ohio Tree Care Conference, he says, is February 24th to the 26th in Sandusky, Ohio. I'm just seeing if that's on the list that Ann Bonner gave me.
It is.
Yes, it is. Yes, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So it'll get 2 mentions in this list then. Are there any questions on Ron's report? Any issues you want me to raise with Ron?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Any questions for Ron? Or any issues to raise with him?
Was he going to help us find someone to help put together this brochure that we were...
Yes. Well, he will get it printed, he said.
He what?
He will arrange for it to be printed and whatever else
to be formatted.
Distributed.
I tried to work on it a little bit today, but it's past my skills.
Ah, okay.
So it requires, and there's well, you're probably all familiar that you're able to put 3 columns on a portrait, and I got 2. But
I can do 3. So if you send it to me, I've done a trifold before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to do that?
I can do it, yeah. So if you can email it to me, I'll...
Well, you have it.
I have it, do I? Okay.
The benefits thing.
Yes, but if you could... Well, what would be helpful is if you could indicate which bits you want on which parts of the panels.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was trying to do today, but I can't do that unless I do it by hand, and I could do that.
Mm-hmm. You could just, if you just have a document, you could just mark, panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, and then David could.
Yeah.
So you come in pages, first line.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just sequential.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing that we needed to talk about, or think about anyways, we don't just want to hand out a paper with different lines on it. We want it to be more colorful and have some artwork or at least some pictures.
Now that bit I don't have. I can do the technical bit, but not the artwork.
Well, who might be able to do that?
I don't know.
One person, Chris Fall, said that she has a student who might be able to do it.
Okay.
Would that be okay with you guys if I talk with her about that again?
Sure, yeah. And what I can do is, if you tell me what text you want on which part of the trifold, I can then lay it out and leave spaces there.
Put it as it follows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Oh, okay. I'll have a look at it again. See if I can do it that way.
Unless you want to move them around in some way, it's okay with me.
Yeah.
If Ron would like a volunteer on that planning committee, from the tree commission, I'd be glad to be a part of that. I don't know who's on the planning for the riparian.
Oh, okay.
But if he would like someone from the tree commission, I may not be the only volunteer. But I like that area, and
yeah, I do as well.
It has a lot of potential.
Appreciate you.
There's a lot of nice trees already established.
Yeah. Okay. Brochure, trifold. Okay. Anything else for Ron and his report?
Oh. Well, I don't know whether he's interested, but we had talked about developing a process for following up. Mm-hmm. And I don't know whether he wants to have some input in that or whether he cares. Well,
the process is going to be that a year after we make a decision, I'll have a note in my calendar, and at that point we will follow up and find out. So, for instance, in this case of the West Stimpson property, I'll put a note in my calendar for next year to remind me to ask the question: has it been done, or what is happening?
I was thinking of something more formal. That there be a.
We can't have anything more formal. There are no other resources to make it more formal, unfortunately.
Well, that was the question.
Yeah.
Whether he would be able to identify some clerical support that would help us keep a tickler file of some sort.
No. The city doesn't have resources like that. We used to, a long time ago, have one of the clerical assistants help us. She actually took the minutes and so on, but that was lost many years ago, that one. So now we have to do these things ourselves, and then we have to rely on the code office at that point to pick it up and go with it.
Yeah.
And I think Rick developed a system where you would email them and there would be some kind of evidence. They'd take a picture and send it back to you. Wasn't there? Seems like I remember that from a year.
Just have to take a picture and email it to me, and we can.
Yeah, right.
That's all we need.
Yeah.
And when you're done, David, I'd like to fill in the commissioners here on some things we've done.
Okay. Yeah.
We talked too about.
And then you'd copy it to David and then send it to him so we would be informed. Okay, good.
Did you have something else, Nancy?
Without having it in the minutes and the minutes being available then. With the attachment of the
we've resolved the issue of the minutes. I send them to Ryan, and he then gets them posted at the city website. Mm-hmm. And you found them now, have you?
I have found them. Yes.
Good. So somebody else can find them there. So they are there now, whereas before they weren't. appearing. I mistaken.
Attached to it, is the picture of the drawing.
Attached, for instance, the ones for today's meeting, when we approve them in February, they will have these drawings that we've got here attached to them, yes, along with the decision that we've made about this particular property. And so we'll use that then as the reference point.
And you're doing that yourself?
Doing what?
The minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I've been doing the minutes for
years,
ever since I was chair,
Right.
and Alfie McWilliams was doing it since most of the time she was chair.
What'd you think? It was magic? Was it magic?
Well,
They
I
just
don't know.
got.
I just thought that you must have some help along
Nope.
the way.
Nope. I have a video, which is good. To my mind, the video is actually a better record of the meeting than my minutes. To be
Well,
honest.
if anybody asks why
Yeah.
we don't get more done,
Yeah.
I can explain to them that
Yeah.
we have no help.
Yeah. Well, we do our best. We live within our means. Okay. Rick, did you?
Oh, yes, please. First thing I'd like to do is apologize to the commissioners that I'm not here meeting. To be honest with you, I'm working some rather long hours, and I have numerous commitments, and I have to time management so I can get sleep at night. So what I've worked out with David is if there's something that's really going to planning commission, then I will come forward and explain that plan. Otherwise, I usually just email it to David, and if it's under that requirement, then we work that out. Okay. Just like Tuesday, I had BZA, and we have the same thing where we do all the work. Where we used to have a secretary, now I have to have a code officer do that work. So we're all feeling the pain. And a couple of things I'd like to address is that down on East State Street and on the bike path, as the code office, we've addressed some homeless issues there, working with police department. We've pulled up some camps. So that is part. And we do that through the solid waste and litter control department. So they run the path, and they call me up and say, well, there's this and this and that. And so I go down and verify, and then we clean it up. So my solid waste and litter control officers, of which we have 2, are very active in that respect, keeping that area clean, actually, even though some of it is OU property. And we also address the stores that are there, like Walmart and Lowe's. We're constantly on them to keep their areas clean. So I'm sure you'll notice that the bike paths are pretty clean. We drive by there and we speak with the managers of all the stores along the bike path. And we make sure that they keep that area clean, or we pick it up ourselves. Another area was last year, this is not necessarily trees, but along the river, we discovered someone was dumping pallets, about 100 of them. And we took care of that. Basically, we met with the owner, and we had that cleaned up within 12 hours. And just that weekend, we had that massive rain, which would have washed all those pallets down to someone else's property. So these are some of the things we do that most people don't know about. Back to trees, I'm sure if you had the opportunity to go down Columbus Road, where Goodwill has gone into that property, I think you'll agree with me that they've done a tremendous job in meeting their obligation of planting trees, and it looks rather nice. Now, we stayed on top of them, and we kept saying, you better plant trees, you better plant trees. So they planted trees. But there were some issues, drainage issues on the backside, which we made sure they corrected. So these are a lot of things that the code office has to cover that most people don't see us or understand that we're responsible for, and make sure that the owners meet their requirements and their commitments when they're building or constructing something. For example, another one is one of the garages had a lot of vehicles that were not in the compound, and they were close to trees. We addressed that, and they've since moved those vehicles away. That they were almost leaking oil, most of them. So we had that cleaned up, especially down Columbus Road, which is a wellhead protection area and a flood zone. So that has a high priority for us, and we pay a lot close attention to what goes on down there. Smaller construction projects, we work with the owners as much as possible to help them and work out where we can get trees planted as we can. And some of the properties, as you very well know, the property now is very limited, and so that the property that's available to build on is usually odd shaped or smaller than what's available. So there's very limited space for them to build a home or to put a business on. One good example is 134 Columbus Road, where they just built the title place. Beautiful building. It was an odd piece of property that probably would have never had anything on it based on where it was at. And we managed to work with the owner and had that little building put in there. We also address right-of-way issues. We make sure that people don't put things in the right-of-way, and that's a very touchy situation because it requires measurement. So what one person may not think is a city right-of-way, it is, and they put their little white picket fence in there, or they put a parking spot in there, and we have to address those issues. And for the most part, they get a revocable license, so it's a rather long process. They have to go through Planning Commission and then up to Council for approval. So these are long processes that we try to catch. And so code does a lot of things that people are unaware of, administrative items that we take care of. People putting up fences where they're not supposed to. I will share with you a little secret that we do, and the audience can appreciate this, is that Google Earth is quite a tool, and we use it. And we also use the auditor's site. Google Earth, the mapping there is 2014, 2015. So, but when we bring up the new auditor site, which is March of 2018, we can compare what was in 2015 and what is now on the recent site at the auditors, and we can focus in on what's being done. So through satellite process, we are able to look at people's backyards, what they put in, what they don't put in. So if they're thinking of putting a fence up, we'd appreciate it if they come in and fill out a permit, or at least call our office and ask us about it. So I'm open to any questions that you might have.
Do you have any questions for Rick?
So does Goodwill own the eastern lot adjacent to their parking lot? I noticed a number of new trees planted there.
Well, Goodwill just rents the building.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're just renting the building there.
Okay.
So I believe it's Tat Realty. And then, so that whole property is owned by them. And they've been very understanding and very cooperative in getting all the dirt and things. Matter of fact, 2 days after I called them, they were out there, and I assigned people to lay the straw down, the grass down to take care, because not only do we address it with trees, we also address it through stormwater pollution prevention, which is also part under code. And we work with ODNR, and we go out there and we get on them to cover the soil or whatever soil is being moved. Mm-hmm. And of course, they had mounds of dirt there while they were doing construction, and they were required to cover that. And they're also required to put up silt fencing so they don't pollute the river. Mm-hmm. So that's also part of code that we're required to cover them. So, we have a broad spectrum of responsibilities.
So there's one owner for the lot that Goodwill is on, and then the adjacent green area. So that's all. So were some of the trees required for that building? Were some of them put in that adjacent green area? Because I noticed that there are some tree cutouts for trees, but it's not regular, and there are not many in the parking lot. And that as I understand it, that ordinance was there in order to shade parking lots. So, and it looked like some of them that have grassy area but no trees, but it looked like there were some utilities there, and that perhaps is why they couldn't put them in.
Right. There were some changes in how this was all laid out because of utilities. Mm-hmm. And when they designed how the swell, or where the water goes into, originally there were some issues, and we caught it. Mm-hmm. And working with Public Works, we managed to get them to fix that. So that was part of the issue there. So they managed to plant some trees elsewhere on the property. And then also they've promised me that when they do build on that portion that's not currently constructed on, and obviously they're going to have to come to us again and through Planning Commission because of the size of the structure that's possibly going to be going in there. And we'll address trees again in that respect.
Well, and hopefully they'll leave the ones that they've already planted.
Well, they're on the perimeter. So
On the perimeter.
Well, there's some on the perimeter, but there are also some adjacent. Yes, and it's close to the road. But I noticed that when that parking lot was paved, there were no cutouts for trees. So it was very reassuring to find that there were some trees planted. It seemed kind of minimal. So that's why I thought maybe some of the requirements.
And they held true to promise on the backside of the property because they had removed a lot of trees there and there was a lot of dead trees. So we had an issue there and we confronted them and there was some complaints from local owners about that and we addressed it and they planted trees to replace those.
So the people who own the property are planning to do further development in the area?
I'm sorry?
They're going to do further development of that area?
I would assume yes. That's the plan. I have not seen it yet, but I'm sure with that piece of property as prime real estate, they're going to put something down there.
Any other questions for Rick? If not, thank you for being here tonight.
You're welcome.
So have you used the letter at all that we talked about? You and I put together a letter.
No, I have not. I have not.
Is that because you haven't had any?
No reason to use it, really. Most of the time, we with a phone call, we solve the problem. And that's how we work. I'd rather work that way than send a letter.
How does it work?
If there are issues, we normally just pick up the phone and call the individual.
Well, the point was to have a time when you went out and checked on a routine basis.
Right.
You know, so that at a point in time that the person knew you were coming or could know if they remembered.
Right. Well, we shoot them an email or I give them a call and let them know. But you have to understand, I also double up with what we're doing for stormwater pollution prevention. So I try to combine all my inspections for a particular site to do one inspection. Because otherwise, I just do not have time to do that. So when I go in with ODNR and we look at a construction site, and we look for stormwater pollution prevention, we look at zoning, we look at construction, we look at if there's grass planted, if there are right-of-way issues, numerous things. So we try to clump that all together.
So are there other phases of construction that require 2 years to happen and then go back later?
No.
Well, that's the point of the letter.
Yeah.
It was 2 years after to be sure that we...
Well, it's two planting seasons.
It's 2 planting seasons,
Yeah.
that's correct. So when we identify, it's kind of like what we have right now on the corner of Grosvenor and
The idea was to set a time during the time that they're here and then to keep that in mind when we...
Yeah, but as we said at the time, it's difficult to pin that date down because you start, we make an approval here, they then go through a development phase, and we don't know how long that's going to be. And then once they finish development and they occupy the building, they've still got 2 planting seasons to complete. And so there is no definite date out there.
But we could set an approximate time.
Well, that was why we set the idea in place of using the 1-year anniversary of the approval as the way to catch where are we? Has the development been completed? And what are the plans for planting the trees? Because usually within a year, we get that. Now, it doesn't always happen because I think we can. They can go.
We have 2 years.
I think the 2 years comes from the fact that if somebody doesn't act on a plan,
correct,
they then have to come back to you for reapproval.
Well, let's use Menards as an example.
Yeah, there's a good example.
Okay, that's a good example. All right, their permit or application is good for 1 year. Now, they have 2 years to start construction from the point of approval of the application. Okay, so now I was told, in speaking with Menards, that they weren't going to build until, I do believe, spring of 19, so they should be looking at doing something. But their permit was going to expire. So now they can come back and reapply. And that's just a matter of me typing up a letter putting it to planning commission, and they'll sign off on it. That's really what it amounts to. And then that time begins all over again. So where we might think they're going to plant a bunch of trees, their construction time has been extended to allow that to happen. Do you understand where I'm going with that?
I forgot my hearing aids. I'm having trouble hearing.
Okay.
I'll get with you later, Bill.
Okay, that's fine.
Any other questions for Rick? Okay. I've got a series of announcements from Ann Bonner. We've already heard one of them. There's a tree care conference at Kalahari Resort in Sandusky, February 24th to 26th. May the 3rd, the City of Belpre will host the Tree City USA Awards for Southeast Ohio. 21st of June, Ohio Urban Forestry celebrates 40 years of service with a 40th anniversary Urban Forestry Forum at the Ohio Expo Center in Columbus. Sometime in September, there'll be the annual Tree Survival School at Little Hocking. And all the way out to November 20th and 21st, the Arbor Day Foundation Partners in Community Forestry conference will be in Cleveland. All these details will be in the minutes of the meeting. I apologize, I didn't get them into the agenda for you for today. I only heard them at the last minute.
So has anybody gone to the survival school?
I haven't.
Might be fun to do.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, any other matters for the Tree Commission to consider? If not, we have some minutes, and again, I apologise for getting them to you late. I think the most extensive part was the presentation from the two graduate students, and I still don't have a copy of their report. Once I get a copy, I will circulate it and obviously attach it to the minutes of this meeting as well. So
I'll approve them minutes.
Thank you, David.
At that point.
Can I have a second, please?
I'll second them.
Thank you, Lee. Any objection to approving the minutes of the December 13th meeting? Hearing none, we have minutes from that meeting. Our next meeting will be February 14th in the council chamber. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.